So, is anybody here? You do. Can I hear you, Stacy? I'd rather just talk with you than type it all. Why do land hermit crab dig underground to molt? I'm going to give you a guess. It's an educated guess. Molting is really difficult and risky. And if you're doing it out in the open, it's going to take you a long time. You're unable to run away. And if you're hiding somewhere, no matter if you're a land hermit crab or a blue crab or a fiddler crab or any kind of crab, if you are in a dark, secluded place, your chances of surviving molting are a whole lot better than if you are out in the open, unable to run away, unable to do anything. So I'm sure that's why hermit crabs will go underground to molt. Can you hear me? I wish I could hear you too. Okay.
I'm here too. I can talk to you if you want.
Hi. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to.
We can hear really clearly.
Yeah, good. Sometimes you see them molting on the surface, huh?
Yes.
I don't know.
So our theory has been that they are in poor conditions and not capable of molting. Oh, I don't know if I'm. Hold on.
I hear you and I see you.
I'm getting feedback. I think it's because I forgot to put that up.
Okay.
So I'm like hearing myself back. So our theory is that they were in poor conditions and delayed their molt, like while they were at the pet store. But maybe by the time they get in our tank, the molt has begun and the outer exo is beginning to separate and they can't dig.
There's a point of no return. That's a good suggestion.
Is that could be an accurate explanation?
That makes sense.
Okay. You know, when we see them, we isolate them to protect them from the tank mate so that they don't get eaten. But people always, why did they do this? But my explanation has been, I don't think they can dig once they get to a certain point, and they have no choice. They have to molt.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. So you mentioned the fiddler crabs climbing trees, and we know that our land crabs do that also.
Not fiddler crabs.
Mangrove crabs. Sorry. I know my land crabs, but not the other ones very well. How high do they go?
I don't know exactly, but they're certainly up. There are they can probably go up as high as they want, but there's also that crab that I had never heard of before I was doing research for this book that actually lays the eggs up in the trees and broods the baby.
One of the bromeliad. That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was so surprised to find out about that. I mean, that was a secret, but I think they with their claws, they can just probably climb up as high as they want.
Yeah, we've been giving our land crabs vertical space, like adding tops to our tanks. And all of my crabs will go as high as they can get. And I'm pretty sure if I gave them another 6 feet, they would keep going. It's crazy.
All right. Yeah. Why not?
I think it's in Madagascar, I read a paper about the Cenobita cavipes and violacens will climb up into openings in the tree and actually change shells up there. And
where does another shell get? How does another shell in the tree?
Yeah, the paper didn't say that. I'm like, are they stealing each other's shells once they get up there and one of them's left naked, or is somebody hauling a shell up there?
That's very confusing. I have no idea why. How the shells get up the trees unless somebody went up a tree and then died and left an empty shell behind.
Yeah, that could be true. Or maybe a bird or something. Like if it was a bird nest or something in there, and maybe they took the crab up there and ate it. I don't know.
All kinds of possibilities.
Why do you think hermit crabs are so popular with humans? Like, why are we obsessed with crabs of all?
You see that? You tell me. I think part of the reason is that they can't pinch you very hard. Rather than keeping other crabs as pets, pets or hobbies or whatever you want to call it. Lots of crabs that are somewhat larger, can give you a pinch, and that's not all that pleasant. But I mean, hermit crabs are really cute. There's no doubt. But you guys should tell me the answer to that question.
Well, the that sparked that question is that crabs are even present in our astrology, and how far back does that go? When we started naming the constellations, we were interested in crabs even way back then.
Right, but I mean, there are constellations. There's a bull, and there's a lion, and there's fish. There's constellations named after all kinds of different animals.
Yeah.
So crabs are just part of the constellation of creatures that are named.
Is the earliest record of any type of crab like in 1800s maybe with some of the research?
What do you mean at the earliest record of
are there cave drawings of not hermit crabs, but of crabs? Were cavemen sketching crabs everywhere, or just buffalo?
I've not heard of any. There certainly might be, but of the cave drawings that I've heard about, it's usually antelope type thing.
Normally,
the kinds of things that they were catching and eating, I guess. There might in fact be some caves near the oceans where they would have put pictures of fish and crabs, but I'm not familiar. I don't know of that.
Okay. So we have a question from Stephanie.
How long the type of pollution toxicity to leave a crab? Okay, they can slowly. There's a word we use called depurate, meaning getting rid of toxic chemicals that they've taken in. It happens fairly slowly. We did one interesting study with fiddler crabs that were exposed to metals like mercury and lead and so forth. And before they molted, they moved a lot of the chemical into the shell. And then they molted the shell and got rid of it, which I thought was a very clever way of getting rid of toxic chemicals.
Yeah, so they basically transferred the toxins out.
Yeah, they transferred the metals, not all of them, but there was a shift in the amount, less in their organs and more in the old shell that was then shed. So they got rid of it, which is a very cool thing to do.
Yeah.
But, in the case of species that eat the shell that they've shed, they're getting it right back again.
Right.
But I haven't seen fiddlers do that. I can't say fiddlers don't do that, but I haven't seen them in the lab do that. So for them, if they in fact don't do that, then that's a very, very cool way of getting rid of toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different questions.
Yeah.
All right. Don't call them toxins. So the word is misused a whole lot, and it's one of my little things that bug me. Call it toxic chemicals, because a toxin is defined as a poison that's made by cells of a living thing, like rattlesnakes,
like venom.
ivy and, spiders, venom, that sort of thing is the definition of toxin. And it's been now used to talk about toxic chemicals in the environment, but it shouldn't be. It bothers me when it is.
Toxin is something that's natural.
Yes. Yes. But of course, metals are natural too, but they're not made by living things, Anyway, so what? Call them toxic chemicals. Right.
She also asked what your favorite study that you were part of.
Dealing with crabs. Hard to say. Well, all right, I'll tell you one that was really fun. This wasn't one of we were in Indonesia doing research on a tiny island.
You've been a lot of places.
Yeah. And we had two different studies going. One was at high tide when we would be snorkeling and looking at which fish and other things were living around the mangrove roots. And then at low tide, you can't do that because the mangrove roots are all out of the water when the tide goes out. And so at low tide, we did a fiddler crab study, and it was looking at the behavior. And there were 4 different species in the same general beach. And we were just sitting in chairs taking notes and watching. And there was, I'm going to try to recall this. And this was, quite a few years ago, almost 20. One species lived near the rocks and ate algae off the rocks. And I'm not going to remember all the details, but then there was another species that just fed at the water's edge as the tide was going out. They were processing the sand, the sediment, which is not a whole lot of food there. And this species was very sort of hyperactive. We saw basically personality differences among the 4 species related to what the food they were getting. There was another one was eating more mud and got better nutrition from eating the mud. And there were definite personality differences among the 4 species. I'm not going to give more detail because I don't remember it, but it was really fun to see that.
I feel like we see some personality differences between our pet crabs too.
Even individuals.
Yeah.
Even individuals, but certainly among 4 different species. Yeah. Here's a question from Michael that I want to talk about. The crab spends a good deal of its life either preparing for a molt or recovering from a molt. It seems to me a very, try to find the right word. The idea of having to spend your whole life preparing for molting, and then recovering from it, and molting being a very risky thing in terms of you could lose some appendages. You certainly are very vulnerable for a while afterwards to predators. It doesn't seem like why would evolution have made this such a common, insect larvae are doing the same thing. As all arthropods do this. And arthropods are the most abundant phylum of animals, particularly because of insects, because there's more insects than everything else put together, more different species. And why would such an inconvenient lifestyle be so common? I don't really understand it. But that's a digression. But yes, they spend, particularly when they're small. When they're smaller, they are molting much more frequently as they're growing. And as they get mature and larger, some crabs actually have what's called a terminal molt, which means they molt that time and they're never going to molt again, at which time they can concentrate on doing other things. But the smaller animals that are molting much more frequently, as soon as they've recovered from one molt, they got to start preparing for the next one.
Yeah, they have a very good climate.
Yeah, it's a complicated life.
Risky's asking where in Indonesia you went.
What was that?
Where did you go in Indonesia?
Well, the place we were, we've been to Indonesia several times in different places, but the place we were when we did that research was a 1 mile square tiny island off of Sulawesi, off of the southeast coast of Sulawesi. The island is called Hoga, and there was a nonprofit English organization that ran a field station where people would come to scuba dive and do surveys of the coral reef. And they were also inviting researchers to come to do their own research. There's a question, have you seen evidence that crabs can change sex? The first evidence I saw was here yesterday. And the discussion I was not aware of that, but you guys have seen it, so now I believe it. But
we're determined to prove it. Yeah, we're on a mission now.
Right, a horseshoe crab is closer related to spiders. It's in the general group where the arachnids are, which is a very different group from crustaceans, where real crabs are. So I'm glad you guys are interested in other crabs besides land hermit crabs. You know, land hermit crabs are wonderful and terrific, but lots of other crabs are too.
Yes,
so I'm glad to see you guys are interested in the other members of critters called crabs.
Yeah. If there's no other questions, we can all jump back to the main stage for the next talk, which is about the export of crabs from Indonesia.
Okay, I will go there too.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. And like I said, I watched it probably 4 times and I still watched it again today. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye. See you guys over on the stage.
Okay, I'm going back to hear the next talk too.
Okay.